Hello. Hi. I didn't actually want this tea. I just thought it'd make a good opening sequence. I don't even think it was that aesthetically pleasing, so cheers. Hello and welcome to another video. I am a firm believer in that the hobby of book buying and book acquiring is much different than the hobby of reading. So I just have a lot of titles that I haven't read yet, and I continue to accumulate them, and I think that's totally okay, and it's fun for me, and it's how I like to spend my money. So yeah, I'm just gonna go over every book that is on my physical to be read list. In reality, there are like over 300 books currently that are on my to be read list on Goodreads, but these are the ones that I own. Also, I think I know a little bit about most of these, but some of these I just don't know anything about. I'm going into this with no preparation in my back pocket. I'm just going to show you them and tell you what little or what a lot I know about them. Thinking maybe I'll separate them into fiction and nonfiction. Okay, nonfiction first, because it is the smallest pile. First is The Source of Self-Regard by Toni Morrison. I am actually halfway through this. It's a collection of some of her speeches and essays spanning 4 decades. They're very good. She is a big vocabulary girly, so sometimes I find these a little bit dense. I think I'll probably pick this up again soon. I am really like exactly halfway through, and they're sort of, it's not a chronological thing. You don't have to read them in order or at one time. So I will pick this back up soon, but she's a genius. The next nonfiction I have is Stephen King's On Writing. I'm a fairly big King fan. I've read quite a few of his stories, and I am really into the idea of reading books on writing. I first heard about this on Noel Gallagher's channel, like in 2019, 2020 or something. And it's been sitting on my shelf ever since then. My dad did pick this off my shelf. He said that there is a bit of a sense of like, if you're not writing every day, and if you're not committing yourself to writing, and if it's not the only thing that you ever want to do always, then you're not committed enough to writing and you'll ever make it. He said that there's a bit of that vibe in this, but I'm gonna read it for myself and see if I pick up on that. Stephen King has such a unique face. Next is Say Nothing, a true story of murder and memory in Northern Ireland. I think this is my mom's copy. I don't think I would have picked this up if there wasn't just like a copy laying around my parents' house, but I'll probably pick it up, maybe, possibly, someday. My mom's notes are in here. This is just like random ass notes that have nothing to do with the book too. Next we have Ear Hustle. This is something that I'm really excited about. It's based on the podcast Ear Hustle, hosted by Nigel Woods and Nigel Poor and Alone Woods. And it's all about revealing stories and the complexity of life within prisons by inmates. Woods himself was an inmate in San Quentin State Prison in California, which I believe is like one of the oldest and largest prisons in the state of California. In 2018, Governor Jerry Brown did commute his sentence because of, I think, partially the podcast's success. I've only listened to a few episodes of the podcast, but the ones that I've listened to are great. It's part of Radiotopia. But yeah, I'm really excited for this one. I'm very inconsistent with listening to podcasts. I just jump around between a bunch of them and don't listen to any consistently. And so I feel like this will give me more of a concise look into some of that content. Inmates and people with criminal histories are constantly and systematically dehumanized. So I'm all for this. Next we have Girlhood by Melissa Febos. This is part sort of investigative reporting, part memoir, part scholarship, but it details some of the many difficulties about being a girl and growing up as a girl. I'm just very interested and attracted to any and all literature that has to do with girlhood. I haven't picked this up yet because I feel like it's gonna make me angry, and like I'm trying to not really be in that headspace right now, but it's been sitting on my shelf for a while, and I think I need to just bite the bullet and read it. Yeah, I don't know. This is The Will to Change on Men, Masculinity, and Love by Bell Hooks. I feel like the issue of men and masculinity and love is very rarely touched upon from a feminist perspective, which I personally believe is like the correct perspective to address it from. And so I'm interested to see what she has to say. Next we have The Miracle of Mindfulness. Wow. Next we have The Miracle of Mindfulness, an introduction to the practice of meditation by Thich Nhat Hanh. The author is a pretty famous Vietnamese Buddhist monk and also a peace activist. It's pretty short, and I was kind of looking for an entry point into meditation earlier this year, and I still would like to pick this up relatively soon. So there's the last nonfiction. Starting off the fiction section of this, which is by far the largest section, we have Native Son by Richard Wright. This is the story of a young black kid living in and growing up in Chicago's South Side in the 1930s. That's essentially all I know about this. I know that Richard Wright is a very famous author, and I'm excited to get to it. It is a thick boy, though, so we'll see. Next we have The October Country by Ray Bradbury. This is, I think, a collection of short stories. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, collection of short stories. And it was a gift. I don't know much about it, but I like the cover, and I've only read Fahrenheit 451, and I read it for school, but I'd be interested in some of his other work. Next, I have Pew by Catherine Lacey. I feel like this one's fairly popular. As far as I know, it's about a person who shows up in a church one day, and a whole town has to decide what to do with this random person. Next is A Movable Feast by Hemingway. This is the most god-awful cover I've ever seen. I hate it so much. But I've heard that this is one of Hemingway's least frustrating books. It's about his time living in Paris. So I don't know when I'll get to this. Honestly, the cover is making me want to gag. So next we have another King book. It's The Stand in this magnificent edition. I think I've read like 5 King books. I don't know. But I'm kind of saving this for spooky season in October. It's also kind of a thick one. I think it's like 800, yeah, it's like almost 800 pages. And the font is hella small. I love reading spooky books in October, and I'm excited for a new King. I also just need to read this. This has been sitting on my shelf for a very long time. I'll go over the next few very quickly because I talked about them in a recent video. This is A Pale View of the Hills by Ishiguro. It's about a woman dealing with the loss of her eldest daughter. This is The Three Body Problem by Cixin Liu. I know I butchered that, I'm sorry. Here for when I am feeling like I want to dig into some good sci-fi. Franz Kafka collection. It's The Metamorphosis, The Penal Colony, and a few other stories. When You Are Engulfed in Flames by David Sedaris. My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, which, like, sometimes this happens and it's so weird. I had never heard of this author before I picked up this book, and now suddenly I see her everywhere. I know like about this series now. I know about her other works. It's weird. And Paradise by Toni Morrison. Also, I have Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, which I'm gonna get to, I think, today. This is his favorites. It's the story about a young girl who gets into a golf cart accident with her best friend, and her best friend dies, and I think the whole town sort of turns against her, and she is forced to flee, and this story is told from the perspective of that character many years later. I don't really remember why I ordered this book specifically. I guess there was something about it that really pulled me towards it at the time. But I'll probably remember why when I start reading it, hopefully. Next, we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Everyone and their mother has read this book, and everyone loves it. I will read it eventually. I just have to get around to it. Next, we have my classics collection. I've said this before, I was gifted a bunch of classics by an English professor that I had in university who was retiring or was just leaving her job at this specific university. They've been sitting on my shelf. They scare me, and I'm going to go over them now. This one actually doesn't scare me, and I would really like to pick up. It's also old as hell, and I should probably tape this back together. But it's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee, and it's a modern classic play. I actually don't know if this is qualified as a classic. I actually think it isn't, but it looked old, so I was like, oh, this is a classic. This dazzling work of gut-wrenching dark comedy presents perhaps the most memorable of married couples, George and Martha, in a searing night of dangerous fun and games with a pawn-like other couple who innocently become their weapons in the savaging of each other and of their life together. Sounds like an October read to me. Next we have Inferno by Dante, which I feel much more inclined to actually pick up now that Hosier's new album is out. I studied abroad in Bologna, Italy for my last semester of university, and I wanted to pick up a copy of this book while I was there because Bologna was a big part of Dante's life, and I just thought it'd be cool to be like, yeah, I picked this up where Dante lived. He also taught at the University of Bologna, which is where I went to classes, so it was cool. I don't know when I'll pick this up, but I will eventually. This is Much Ado About Nothing by Shakespeare. I haven't read a Shakespeare play outside of high school yet. I also am not strongly inclined to. However, I recently saw, I don't think it is actually recent, but YouTube, my YouTube algorithm recently showed me that David Tennant and Catherine Tate were in a retelling of this, and I think the whole thing is on YouTube, and I love anything that David Tennant is in. So I will probably pick this up before I watch that whole YouTube series, probably in one night. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This was gifted to me from my grandmother. I know a lot of people love this. It just scares me. I read Pride and Prejudice, who's by Jane Austen. I know different authors. But I read that a couple years ago, and I just felt stupid. I got halfway through the book, and I had to start listening to it as an audiobook while I was reading, because I just couldn't get into the story. And so my goal is to read one of these and not feel like an idiot, because I know that this is a lot of people really love this, and also a lot of the other classics on this pile that's sitting next to me. and I want to be able to enjoy it. I think I need to, like, really work at not letting it get to me and not making me feel stupid, because I'm not. Speaking of feeling stupid, Dickens, his Great Expectations. Yeah. I'm just gonna put that down. Another Bronte book, Jane Eyre. I was just thinking, maybe if I like Wuthering Heights, I'll also pick this up. If not, I'll donate it. This is one that I thought was pretty cool. It's just 3 Gothic novels. It is The Castle of Otranto by Wapple. There's also, I don't know how to pronounce any of these, Wathek by Beckford, and Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I've read Frankenstein before. I read it in high school with a class, and I remember really liking it, and so I would like to reread it. I think the only reason I really kept this was because Frankenstein is in it, and the only other copy of Frankenstein I have, which I think I gave away now, is like the Dover Thrifts edition, which I think are just so ugly, and it also had a bunch of like my high school annotations in it, which I didn't really like, so I think that's why I kept this. Next is Frogs and Other Plays by Aristophanes. Again,
sorry to this man.
Don't know. It's an ancient Greek comic drama. Yeah, I think it'd be cool to get into some more plays. Also, I'm totally not opposed to like being someone, like as someone who is not reading these in school, I'm so down to like look at the spark notes while I'm reading these. I think that might just help. Well, this is Pride and Prejudice. I have read this. I don't know why this is on this pile. Middlemarch by Elliott Smith. George Eliot, not Elliott Smith. Who's Elliott Smith? Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever get to this. I want to, kind of, I think. It's just a lot. Like, I think it's, I think I need to be more well-versed in classics before I get to this one. It also has a bunch of my professor's annotations in it. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, I don't know. Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. I would be into reading this. I've heard it compared to Stoner a few times by John Williams, which I really did like. I don't know how many times I'm going to say this. We'll see. And then I have the Iliad. This one is translated by Robert Fitzgerald, which I remember I was looking up a few years ago which translation would be the best one to pick up, and I think this one is best for like beginners. I think the Fagles translation is the one that people like the most, but as someone who's new to this story, actually I'm not super new to it. I generally know what happens in this. I actually do know exactly what happens in this, but as someone who's new to reading this kind of text, I've heard this translation is pretty good. Now I think I'm going to make myself a little like TBR pile of books that I would like to get to soon, like ideally before the end of the year. I still haven't thought about this at all, so I would like to get to this. From everything that I've heard, it seems really good. I just really want to know what all hype is about. I'm also going to put, at the very least, I'll put Parable, oh my god, this is so annoying. I'm also going to put Parable of the Sower on this, because I'm very curious about Octavia Butler now, after reading Wild Seed. I'm going to put The Miracle of Mindfulness on there as well. Okay, we're going to put Much Ado About Nothing on here, and we're also going to put Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf on here, because I think plays are the vibe right now. I'm gonna leave the pile at that. These are the ones that I would really like to get to by the end of this year. Okay, that was all I have for you. I didn't finish my tea. It's decaf Earl Grey, if any of you are curious. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I always find these, like, TBR overviews very calming to watch, and I hope that this was that. If you'd like to comment something, or even just, like, say hi, you could do that if you want to. Okay, bye.